Hey guys, I want to talk to you just a little bit about something called fear setting, and this is exactly what Mordecai does, and Ella's going to come help. So basically, what's written up on the board is something very essential that your mentors do, and this is something that Mordecai did, and I never realized this until I discovered this concept this week. And fear setting is simply being able to identify everything that's going to go wrong, and it's amazing on how this works. And basically, Mordecai is saying here, you know it's going to be terrible if you don't do this, right? And so basically, as you can see on the board, you put up your risk and the action you need to take, and whatever this might be. Maybe it is wanting to ask that person out. Maybe it's studying or talking to your teacher about something, or I have no idea what it is, but it's something that you're stressing out about and you're scared about. And somebody said, Tony Robbins said that fear, or not fear, but stress is just something that people call fear when they're an achiever. So if you're stressed out, you're just afraid because you're achieving a lot, or something along those lines. So first of all, in that first column, you need to figure out what is the worst that could just possibly happen. And you have to be super, super specific about this and write like 10 things what could happen. Like me, maybe it's wanting to start a whole new youth rally in the spring, because we don't really have one right now that's for our section of camp in Silver Maple and all this area. So what's the worst that could happen? No one could show up. I don't get enough money. Basically, I go up and there's a bunch of people that just teach the wrong thing. All these terrible things that could happen. I don't have enough resources, or I just don't get it done. So the next column over is, how can I minimize the damage? Well, the first thing is I can make sure, if one of the bad things is it's going to be that things are not taught right, I can say I only use people I know who are sound in the Word. And if I don't have enough resources and the money to maybe bring somebody in, if it's a really good speaker that I want to bring in, and maybe it's one of my friends from Georgia or Arkansas, and to pay their expenses, what can I do to make sure that everything's paid for? Well, I can save my own money. I can ask for donations from the church or different surrounding congregations. I can make sure these things can happen. What if no one shows up? Well, I can make sure I advertise to every congregation in the area. I can make sure that I pay for the appropriate Facebook advertisements. I can do all these things. I can make sure that it's going to happen. And then finally, in that third column, and this is huge, and this is the biggest thing, what can I do to bring me back to a place before the damages happen? So if the worst happens, what can I do to recover? So let's say no one shows up. Well, what can I do to recover? I don't have a lot to recover from there. It's just, well, that's a bummer. I've got to realize I did something wrong, so I just do something better next year. What's the worst that could happen if, somebody goes up there and they start teaching something completely and totally wrong, saying something like, oh, they're preaching and they're saying you can do whatever you want. God's going to forgive you, and, you're going to go to heaven even if you go kill a bunch of people and you never repent. Well, I can go up and say, hey, look, that's not right. And then I can explain about that and go through that. What happens if I have hundreds of people show up and it's this awesome event, but the money wasn't there to make sure there's enough food and make sure that there's enough lodging for people and all those type of things? What do? Well, I got to go back and realize, well, I just didn't have enough, so I need to do more fundraising. I need to do more, and then I need to go out and make personal apologies to everybody that was involved, and then all the damage is minimized, and we're back right to where we need to be. So these are essential, and sometimes when you realize that your fears aren't that big of a deal, things are easier. You need to set your fears so you can go forward, so you realize, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then you can go forward because, I can repair everything. I can make sure that these things are taken care of. So fear set. And this is exactly what Mordecai does with Esther here. He says, the worst that's going to happen, you're going to die anyway. Don't worry about it. And so, Ella doesn't like that part of Esther, do you?
I like him to pick flowers for me at nighttime.
Oh, yeah? So what's the worst that could happen if you pick flowers at nighttime? Well, somebody could come steal you, right? And then, or maybe
we'll make everything pink around the room, and the trees will make strawberries.
For sure. So maybe that won't work in her instance with the fear setting. But I think this is essential. I think it's key. And I think it's something that you need to consider going forward. And if your mentors will help you fear set and goal set, you got a good one. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks a lot.